Yeah.
She said it was such a lonely journey.
But my main thing was, how do they construct, how do they negotiate their identities amidst the heteronormative and also masculine culture of that space? Gay men in male dominated spaces, people think, are gay men not men? Because I'm saying male dominated spaces.
A lot of things that relates to queer people, there isn't much research.
Yes,
Not
yes.
much is documented. Even the history of queer lives.
Middle class gay men are more privileged than gay men who stay in the township, who are more likely to experience homophobic attacks because
people don't know how to even get to an issue because they don't know if they're going to offend you or not.
Do not treat LGBTQ plus issues as, always sort of like this matter that is discussed shortly.
Thank you for watching our video. This show is sponsored by DreamStream. DreamStream is a unique platform where creators can monetize their video content. All creators rely on support from people like you. Join us on the DreamStream platform to support your favorite creator and view the episode without any adverts. Follow the link in the description for a how-to guide. DreamStream, a place where you can create yourself.
A warm welcome to another episode of The Real Queer Talk with myself, Tolo, the inimitable one, Mudaung. And thank you once again for making time to join us. We are always pleased that you make time to join us. So, in June 2019, the International Labour Organization adopted Convention 190 and Recommendation 206, the first ever human rights international labour standard that condemns without a compromise every form of violence and harassment in the in the world of work. So Convention 190 and the accompanying Recommendation 260 actually recognizes that vulnerable groups are disproportionately affected by violence and also harassment at work, and they actually calls for all states to adopt laws, policies, and also regulations that promote the right to equality and non-discrimination in employment and occupation as well. And by that I mean all over the world. So when we look around the world, 72 countries still have laws that criminalizes homosexuality, and the majority of these countries are in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. There are 13 countries in the world where homosexuality is legally punishable by death. However, more and more countries are actually repealing these outdated and discriminatory laws and rather embracing tolerance, social inclusion, equality, and also diversity. So countries such as Botswana was one of the more recent countries that actually repealed its colonial era law against homosexuality. So coming back home, South Africa's constitution, the Employment Equity Act, the Labor Relations Act, and the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act prohibits unfair discrimination on several grounds, including on sexual orientation, and that is one of those laws that we appreciate very much. And still, though, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex workers continue to face discrimination, harassment, even, and violence in communities, homes, and in workplaces. And that's what has brought us to this point to invite Tshepo Maake, who has recently, in fact, in 2023, published an article that is titled Negotiating and Managing Gay Identities in Multiple Heteronormative Spaces, the Experiences of Black Gay Mineworkers in South Africa. And you will agree with me that it makes sense that we engage him to learn more about his study, so we get a sense of how inclusive our workplaces are, particularly in different sectors, and most importantly, that what are their lived experiences on a daily basis. Tshepo Maake is actually a PhD candidate, a lecturer, and also a queer researcher. And also, he's a gym enthusiast. We have to put that out. And if you see him in person, you understand what I'm talking about. Tshepo, welcome to the Real Queer Talk.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for making time to come.
No problem. You're most
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome,
So I have introduced you. Anything else that perhaps you'd like us to know about you that perhaps I did not touch on?
Oh, wow. Actually, like the outdoors as well. I'm not just a nerd. You
Yeah.
know, when you're doing a PhD, everyone thinks, oh,
Especially
just
when you
an
wear
nerd,
glasses.
just books, yes. And you're an academic as well, you know.
And you're serious. And
You know,
yeah.
so yeah, I like that you mentioned that I'm a gym enthusiast because I
Yeah.
love gym.
Yeah.
I like working out. I think that is my happy place as well, you know, because you know, with like the academic space, it gets really hectic, especially when you're
Intense,
doing
yeah.
your PhD studies.
Yeah.
It's your PhD, it's work, so it becomes a bit.
And when you
challenging,
say
you know.
that, I used to work at an institution of higher learning, and one of my colleagues, when they were after they completed, you know, their research and submitted and everything,
Yeah.
she said it was such a lonely journey.
Yes.
Because she's a people's person,
Yeah.
and now she was all alone doing research, and she said it was so lonely.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's why I think for me, I'm lucky in
Yeah.
terms of I have a partner who sometimes say we need to go out, you know, and then I go out to turn up a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
sometimes
to refresh you and
exactly,
come
because
back
otherwise I'll
refreshed.
just be absorbed, and it was like that even before you came
Yeah.
into my life,
Yeah.
because I started in 2021 with the PhD. Actually, I started in 2020,
Okay.
but it was sort of like a pre-proposal before we get to the actual study,
Yeah.
and during those times, even with my master's journey, I used to really just immerse myself in reading and writing, and I think it helps, you know,
Yeah.
being in a relationship, because
They remind you that, hey,
yes,
you need
'cause
a breather.
sorry.
Yeah.
So now he's able to, you know, I'm able to go out,
Yeah.
you know, work out, keep it sort of like a balance. Of
Yeah.
course, studies
Yeah.
are gonna take more of your time, but also have some time for yourself.
Yeah.
Because once you get absorbed in it,
That's it.
when you are done, then you will feel like now you have to start again, to form relationships, to find friends again.
Yeah.
Because you've neglected everyone. You know?
Makes sense.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And have you always been a person who's into academics?
No.
Yeah.
I haven't been. I got to UP 2012 just to do a B social work. I wanted to do a bachelor's degree in social work, and a friend of mine that I was studying with left because it was his second degree.
Okay.
He left to go somewhere else, and then he called me and said, "Hey, it's not nice here in social work," you know. So I changed to a BA, and somehow enjoyed sociology. But after my degree, I went and worked in corporate for about a year, 6 months, and I realized this is not for me. I just want to go back to school. Then that's when I went back to UJ to do my honors, and then they gave me some tutoring job, and I started loving it from there.
Yeah.
You know, I started doing tutoring, and I also started doing research from my honors. Then with my masters, I did research, and then that's when I became a lecturer while I was doing my masters. So then I just got into it. Now I don't really see myself doing anything else apart from academia. It has become my love. That is really something, and I love research, and I love the research that I do. You know, I feel like that is very important research, and I feel like I'm in the space that I'm supposed to be in.
Yeah. And just an overview of your master's thesis, right? And by the way, he passed it cum laude, right?
Thank you. Yes.
We need to put it out there.
Yes.
You know, just an overview in terms of, you know, what you wanted to focus on. Yeah.
Okay. If you look at the paper that I published last year, so the paper that you mentioned was first published online in 2021. Then last year it was published in allocated to a volume and an issue.
Okay.
So last year I also published a paper from the masters as well. It starts with saying, "Are there gay men in the mines?" You know, so that was my question when I started with my research. Because for my honors, I interrogated this religiously sanctioned homophobia, you know, where pastors go on and preach homophobia in church and all that. So then I was looking for an interesting topic. And as I was doing my honors, I really asked myself that question. So where are the gay men in these spaces? Do they exist? And when I started the study, somebody asked me the same question that I thought. And I was like, well, I think I know one. And if I know one, I'll find others. But that is the aim of my study was to sort of like visibilize gay people in that space, to say because now a lot of times, a lot of workplaces, there's this idea of compulsory heterosexuality where we expect everyone there to be heterosexual.
Yeah.
And especially what people think about my study, they're like, but gay men in the mines, were they there, because we've been accustomed to this norm that only heterosexual men can work in that space.
That's
So
true.
that's what pushed me to do my master's research in the mining space. And I was fortunate enough to identify the 5 guys who were really, willing to participate. I got a lot of rejections. That was a bit discouraging, because some of the guys you find on Facebook, you approach, they're not willing. But at least with the 5 guys that I got, I was able to get an idea. But my main thing was, how do they negotiate their identities amidst the heteronormative and also masculine culture of that space? So a lot of times, people, when I say gay men in male-dominated spaces, people think, are gay men not men? Because I'm saying male-dominated spaces. But that's not what we are saying. The reality is that sexuality matters in the workplace. And a lot of times we tend to think that, why do you have to separate gay men? Because the realities of gay men can never be the same of the realities of heterosexual men. Heterosexual men have the heterosexual privilege in that space, and gay men do not really have that, So I wanted to unpack how they, encounter the spaces. How do they deal with discrimination, if it's there? Because I don't want to assume that it's there. If they come out, if they disclose the sexual identities, how do people react to them?
So the ones that you approached, when they declined, did they give you reasons why?
Especially when you're doing research, and I think that is, I this year I published a paper this month, actually, on my PhD experience. And the same I published for my master's as well. So it was a follow-up paper. For my master's, I was talking about this issue of struggling to get participants for your research. A lot of times, some people, it's a matter of they have not yet disclosed their sexual identities in that space, and therefore they feel that they do not want to engage, because they feel like maybe you will, so like they'll be exposed. Because sometimes you sort of like, because with our research, we tell them, I'm gonna do my best to maintain confidentiality, but some people don't easily get convinced. But it has to do with the language as well. Because with my PhD, instead of with my master's, I used to say, can I interview you? So now with my PhD, I was say, can we have a chat? Just for you to tell me about your experiences of,
so the approach
of
also
working
counts.
Yes, the approach definitely counts. Because now, if you come to and say, yeah, I'm conducting this study, would you like to participate? And also you need to take your time building rapport, because now social media is not a safe space. So now you need to engage with the person first, So with my PhD, it was a bit more different, because I was engaging on the socials about my research, and people started knowing, others started inboxing me, and then that's how, then I got a lot of referrals, so it became easier. But for my master's, it was a bit of a struggle.
And when you say people would say, when you say gay men, are they not really men? But really, in workspaces, because I think what triggered the interest for me was that I used to be a unionist when I was in corporate, and I used to serve as an NEC member of a federation, and you'd always, observe, around the table and in meetings, and how, people conduct themselves, and the expectation, as well, and for people that that they're queer as you are, how they carry themselves around, just to give the picture that is expected there. So for me, I got excited to learn, that you have actually taken it that far, particularly in the mining sector, where one would have never thought you could take it there, But choosing the subjects, how did you go about that?
Yeah, well, it's really, for me, I've always been bothered about LGBTIQ plus people being treated differently in city spaces. I'm a rural boy, I grew up in church, it was, and we, when I left the rural space to go to varsity, that's when I really got exposed to other LGBTQ people. And I don't want to lie, especially with sexuality is very diverse. You can never claim to understand all of it. And even at that time, I was starting to understand, what do they mean when they talk about a transgender person, but I appreciate the fact that I was in sociology, I was in the social sciences. Therefore, we were able to discuss issues of sexuality, issues of gender in class. So I've always been bothered about that, and I thought I wanted to penetrate a space that is strictly or very heteronormative, and I want us to break the silence and start the conversation. Because now we need to have inclusive workplaces. If we don't do the research, then we're not gonna have that. And I looked, there wasn't research. There was no research. I looked.
Actually, in a lot of things that relates to queer people, there isn't much research.
Yes,
Not much is documented. Even the history of queer lives is not much documented.
Definitely, because you have to really go to depth to find the information. But for particularly gay men, it was a matter of I wanted to interrogate also not just the heteronormative culture, but the patriarchal norms within that space. So I was not, because there was already research on women in mining, which said women are dominated because of patriarchy. And there was already research in workplaces on LGBTQ plus identities in workplaces. So there was not particular.
Need a photo studio? The Dreamstream Photo Studio includes a 2.7-meter PVC backdrop in black and white and is available for only 115 rands per hour. You can also rent a Canon R6 and lights. All rentals are for studio use only. Terms and conditions apply. Contact studio at dreamstream.co.za.
Thank you, Ben, for coming out tonight. My name is Son of Augustine. Let's go.
Workplaces. So I said, but within the LGBTQ plus community, these are different people with different experiences. We cannot group the experiences. The experiences is there's this privilege even amongst gay men. You find that middle class gay men are more privileged than gay men who stay in the township, who are more likely to experience homophobic attacks because of the context that they find themselves. So my argument was that we shouldn't just always talk about the LGBTQ plus. Sometimes we must break it down because of the nature and the context. So that's when I went into mining to say I want to interrogate this heteronormativity and patriarchy as well, because patriarchy also, while we think the mines are sort of like privileged spaces for men. Gay men are a different category of men. Not that they're not men, they are men like any other men. But they're different because of what? Their sexuality. Because they can be excluded based on that alone. They can be discriminated based on that alone. And that is what the findings showed as well, where the participants were like, I cannot disclose because of the space that I'm in. I understand that if I disclose, I will be discriminated.
Sure.
So I'd rather just pretend to be heterosexual.
So how many did you were your subjects, and were they from one mine or different mines?
So I had 5 guys that I interviewed.
Okay.
3 were from the Northwest.
Okay.
2 were from Bulang. Of course, with the research you can't mention the exact mine to protect your participants. But and I had to go there to do the interviews. I did one interview in a restaurant.
Okay.
And that is also part of research. Research is an experience. So when I interviewed him in the restaurant, I realized that it was not a safe space for anonymity and confidentiality, because now I could see how edgy he was as I was interviewing him.
So it's more of other
it's
people
sort of like looking, yes. And then when I start speaking a bit loud, it's like, okay, please, So I realized that I was also putting the participant in an uncomfortable position, and I think that's what I reflected on in my other paper. And then I took it with me and said, okay, in my PhD research, I should be aware of that because
Yeah.
but yeah, it was within those two provinces that I went to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what were the common themes in terms of the challenges that they go through?
Okay. I think the one is discrimination, of course. Discrimination, it because they had not disclosed or people were not aware.
Yeah.
Although people, people sort of like categorize you based on how you behave.
It's always the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of them said to me in my dissertation, I gave him a pseudonym, Philly, and he said to me, one time he's a safety officer.
Okay.
And he said one time we're having a meeting, so they have safety meetings every day, and he said, one of the colleagues called him a stubborn safety rep,
Aish.
and he said I just sort of like ignored it and pretended like I didn't hear it.
Sure.
So, and I said, why didn't you do anything about it? He said, but the problem is that even if I go to HR, I will even be, victimized even more. So felt like it's no point for me to raise it. And so the other thing is passing. A lot of them were passing as, not actually all of them were passing as heterosexual. And it also relates to my my theoretical framework as well, because I was thinking I referred to this stigma theory, where because of stigma we sort of like let go of an attribute that is not accepted, and we sort of like adopt a fictitious attribute that is socially accepted. Now the heterosexual is more acceptable.
Yeah.
So that's why even with the gay guys, the ones who look more heterosexual, or who portray attributes that are socially perceived as heterosexual are better accepted as compared to the other
others,
guys.
yeah.
So they were passing, and passing means you need to now manage the identity. You can't live freely. You have to watch how you behave. You have to watch what you say. Can you imagine that? That becomes a lot of work, a lot of tasks for you.
I can just imagine. Were you able to determine how that affected them psychologically?
It did, because they actually mentioned that I do not feel like I'm myself when I get to work. What I look forward to is leaving this space
Aish.
so that I can get home.
And
at least in my home.
That's where you're spending most of your time.
Yeah, exactly, because you are
Aish.
there for like 7-8 hours every day. So he said, in my home, at least that's where I can be. So their sexuality is now confined to a home. That's where they can express it. But now it doesn't start at work. It starts from childhood, where you're starting to manage this identity, and then work sort of like pushes you into this space. Because now you've been managing your identity, and even in friendships as well. There were others who he had groups of friends. There were the straight friends and the gay friends. Now the gay friends are aware of the straight friends, but the straight friends are not aware of the gay friends. So and he said to me, it is so difficult because now, even if I meet a boyfriend, I can't introduce him to my straight friends. I have to, when I'm with my straight friends, it's a totally different ballgame. So it's a lot of psychologically, it's a straining process, because you think about yourself and you wonder, am I in the right space? Am I not? Am I in the right space to do this? Am I allowed to do that? So those were some of the issues that came.
Sure. So in terms of work performance, how does all these dynamics then play out in that?
Somehow for them, they were like very good at their work. And I think that is what I think what work does, it sort of like makes the space bearable, because then when you get to work, your only focus is the work. You don't want to socialize. One guy is a whole truck operator, and he said, even during lunch I stay in my whole truck, I eat there.
But because when I was preparing I then got curious to know that, do they form relationships at work, friendships or relationships? Because during lunch, during tea time, or even in meetings, do they get to interact with other people? What is that like?
That's a good question, because they avoid forming relationships. They avoid forming relationships. That's what I'm telling you about the whole truck operator. He said to me, I can't socialize with people at work. And the thing is, if I socialize too much, they will then get to, I might throw in something and then they get to
So they
find
can
out.
pick up the
Yes. So
nuances
I'd
that
rather
are...
all the time at work, most of the time I'm by myself. And also you see that is also pressure, and it's not nice being at work and not being able to engage with people or do anything. You just have to be in your corner somewhere, and then that is where you exist in that space.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. Yeah.
And for you, what are some of the issues perhaps that you were not anticipating that surprised you?
Okay. I would say, but you know what I liked as well,
Yeah.
is that within that space, it was one of them who, so the in Pumalanga, it's like open coal mines.
Okay.
It's not
Yeah.
like underground mines.
Yeah.
And they really, were in good positions. I also interviewed a safety manager as well.
Yeah.
But I brought in that concern that, with management comes power, but that power then is taken away from you because of your sexuality. So even in management, then you can't practice.
So you can exercise it to a certain extent.
Yes, it's limited because he said to me that there was one gay guy who was discriminated at work, took the matter to HR, and he said I couldn't support him because if I did, he was gonna raise eyebrows.
Oh,
and I didn't want to bring attention to myself. This
is deep.
So yeah, it was so for me it was a bit of a struggle as well to hear people talking, and then I felt like you should be doing something.
Yeah.
But I realized that the spaces that we are in are different. So as a researcher, I cannot claim to understand the mining space. I've never worked there, and I do not really know how extreme.
Because the culture is different.
Exactly how extreme the traumatic occupational culture is. Only they know, and they understand it. Because what I was telling you about earlier, I'm coming to a point of privilege. I'm an academic. I speak about sexuality all the time. Everyone knows that I'm gay. And the work that I do, I have the space, and I had to understand that they are in a different context as compared to me. And the nice thing about research is that as a researcher, you can also be reflexive, where you sit down and you think, okay, how am I relating with the participants' experience? Because at the same time, you can be an insider, you are an outsider as well. You can be an insider because of your sexuality. They trust you because you are also gay like them. But you are an outsider because you're an academic. You are a researcher. It's like you're coming to them to look for information. So there was those kind of like the relationships, rocky relationships. But I learned a lot from them. I took a lot from them, and I plan to go back to the mines because I feel like there's a lot to be done there. For my PhD, I'm looking at the SAPS and the SANDF.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the two spaces I'm looking at. But once I'm done with my PhD, I want to go back to the mines again. I think there's more there, and we need to go there because the research is the first step to sort of like changing this conceptions, this heteronormative conceptions. Policies, we've learned that policies and laws are not enough anymore.
Definitely.
So we need the research. We need to have the conversation. We need to sort of like disrupt these heteronormative cultures.
Sure. And I think that is brilliant, really, because we have a lot of young, queer people that are studying in the mining, and they are going there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be said. I mean, probably others have actually left because of such.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just that I came across, and that's the limiting thing about research. A lot of people are not willing to participate because of those reasons that I mentioned. I do believe that when I go back, I will somehow find, and I hope, let me say, because I'm hopeful, let me call it into existence. I will find gay guys who are open about their sexuality
Yeah.
in that space, because I would like to know the experience, you know, because if you find a person that hasn't disclosed, you know, they might not be, you know, they will give you a different narrative
Yeah.
based on someone who did not
has.
disclose their sexual identity as compared to someone who people know their sexuality, you know. So I'm really hoping to chat to people who have disclosed the sexual identities. Not so long ago, I got a Facebook inbox from one guy, and he said to me, he posted. It actually was not an inbox. He tagged me. I'm not very active on Facebook, so he tagged me, and I sort of like hide text because I don't want them to be popping up on my timeline without me approving.
Approving it,
So so he tagged me, and in that text he said, the mining industry is not for gay men. It is a horrible, horrible experience, the most horrible experience that I've had. And I think he was open about his sexual identity. So I plan to go, you know, I didn't really have a long conversation with him, but I did mention to him that I want to go back, and then I would love to, you know, because he left now. He was leaving at the time, but I still want to talk to him, you know, to get an idea of how he found the space to be. Yeah.
Sure. So share with us an overview really of the conclusion and perhaps the recommendations from your work.
So the findings showed, of course, that heteronormativity, this heteronormative ideologies were, and that's the thing about mind space as well. I'm just going to get to my masculinity now. Heteronormativity serves as a barrier to the, what do you call it? I wouldn't say, it's not really a performance, but it serves as a barrier to sexual diversity. In the mind, to sexual diversity being acknowledged in the mind. And that is my argument that we need now to break that, you know, culture, that heteronormative occupational culture. So in my paper this year, following from the one that I also published, I was saying that we need to visibilize gay identities. And my recommendation was that these conversations on LGBTIQ plus identities should not be once-off conversations. They should be part of the culture. You know,
I'm on my feet, the underdog, and I won't be beat. Turn the lights up now, welcome to the show. I ain't never
Are you a musician?
my eyes on the prize until I die. I'm gonna rise.
The Dream Stream Music Studio is now available on Sundays for only 295 rands per hour.
We work for a falling line. We gon' give it all until the end, until the end of time.
It includes a 12-channel desk, a variety of mics and cables, electronic drum kit, and a laptop for recording. Terms and conditions apply and booking is essential. Contact studio at dreamstream.co.za for a site visit.
and we know the policies are there, and especially in the mining space as well. They did mention, they say it's just included in policy, where they say you are not allowed to discriminate based on race, gender, sexual orientation, and
So it's somewhere in one line.
yes, you know. And so my recommendation was that, and if you were to see this paper that I published this year, I said, you know, the mining space there needs to be a bit more education and more conversations, because I believe in education.
Yeah.
Sometimes and I say this with caution because I can be attacked as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes I say we are sometimes too quick to label people as homophobic and thinking, because I feel like sometimes people will ask uncomfortable questions out of genuinely not understanding, because we were all socialized in a heteronormative culture, you know, where we believe that heterosexuality is the norm. If you are a boy, you're supposed to be attracted to girls.
I
If you're
totally
a girl,
agree with
you know,
you there because we have an opportunity to educate.
yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes.
because sometimes you'll also find that people don't know how to even get to an issue because
Yeah.
they don't know if they're going to offend you or not. And you see them tiptoeing around you.
Yes,
But
yes,
once you
yes.
make them comfortable and engage them, it's opportunity to teach
Then
them.
they can, yes.
And once they have the knowledge, their thinking changes towards you.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Because that's what that's my thinking around it, that we need to, because now what we do is if we fight, we are too quickly to be defensive, then they'll stop asking the questions.
Yeah.
Stopping asking the questions means the status
want
quo
to know.
remains.
True. Yeah.
So that is, that was my recommendations from my PhD to say there needs to be more education and do not treat LGBTIQ plus issues as always sort of like this matter that is discussed shortly.
Yeah.
When you talk about discrimination, make it clear what you're talking about. The same way that they speak about gender discrimination in the mine. Historically in the mines, women are not allowed to work there. But we know that the mining space has been working hard to make women comfortable in the mines, to make it more inclusive for women. We know about race as well. Black people are not allowed to be in management in the mining industry. But now they're making ways to make it more inclusive. The
So
same
when you
way,
talk transformation,
it should be
include
inclusive
everything.
transformation for it's exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
Otherwise, we're not gonna see the transformation is still it's exclusive in itself.
Yeah,
Because we are dealing
Then
with
it
other
doesn't serve the
methods.
purpose it's
Yes,
supposed to.
yes. But what I like about research, and I wish and I hope, and I will also try my best for this research to reach the mining, because if they get the research, they will understand that it's actually a problem, of issues of sexual identity. You've seen in the corporate space that there's now becoming, more education and, but now we need to go to that spaces and also challenge these conceptions, especially in these spaces. And I've seen it in my PhD as well, that gay men are not real men. There's this idea of a real man. And Rowan Cornell, when she speaks about masculinity, she speaks about hegemonic masculinity. Those are sort of like dominant masculinity. So they're hegemonic in that we've legitimized their power as a society. So heterosexual men in the mining space, in the police, in the SANDF, occupy this hegemonic masculinity status where now they can subordinate women and they can subordinate other men, including gay men or even disabled men in the mines, where they're not really seen as men enough because they are living with a disability. Gay men are not seen as men enough because of their sexuality, and I remember within African cultures there's this norm where a penis monna o tlhaba ka lerumo, so how tlhaba ka lerumo means that you have to it's sort of like also comes some sort of like the punishment. This is how, if you want to punish a woman, then you must punish her through penetration, and we are supposed as men to be penetrating women, not men engaging in sex with each other, not men. So now the whole thing then, how they see sexuality is a matter of who people sleep with. It's not, they do not see it as the matter of, okay, there's love involved. These people are in an intimate, loving relationship. But the concern is, how do they have sex? That is the first thing that comes there.
You then overlook what they're capable of bringing in the workplace and in terms of performance.
That's true. So the big thing is just that it's, okay, you are sleeping with other men, or therefore you cannot be a man. You're not the real man. A real man must have kids. A real man must be able to bear kids, and you must be a leader. You must grow your clan name, so we need to challenge that occupational culture as well, because it's sort of like a heterosexual male occupational culture that is very exclusive, and because of that, that's why gay men find themselves at the very bottom, and then they are being subordinated in those spaces. So challenging that norm as well will create a bit more safer spaces for gay men, where they don't feel pressure now to pretend to be someone else in the workplace.
This is enlightening. This is so enlightening. For somebody that wants to read more on your work, where do they find it? How can they get hold of it?
Okay, You know, that's the thing. And I think that is what they always talk about in academic spaces, that
Yeah.
our journals stay in files somewhere, they don't reach the people.
They don't serve the purpose it's supposed to.
Exactly. But yeah, so I have a profile on ResearchGate. ResearchGate is a research site. Researchers post their work there. So
Okay.
if you just Google Tshepo Maake and then ResearchGate, then it will take you there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, on Google Scholar as well. Just
Uh-huh.
Google my name, Google Scholar. Then
Yeah.
you will see my papers that are there. So sometimes on my social media, just when I publish a paper, I'll just share it with a
Okay.
link, and I actually do get downloads from through social media, because with this general size they show you where people are downloading your paper from.
Okay. Yeah.
So some of the people do follow the links of the papers when I share them, and then they sort of like get access to the papers
Yeah.
through that. So those are some of the platforms that I share the work on. Much of my work is open access, so it's not really you don't really have to pay for it. You can easily it's just, I think I have one paper that is not open access, but it's because of the journal.
Oh, yeah.
Journals have their own requirements. So, but yeah, my work is easily accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And social media handles?
Yeah, I do not use. I'm not really active
Yeah.
on Facebook or Twitter,
Okay.
but on Twitter I do have a huge following. Not a huge following, but sort of like a reasonable following.
Yeah.
But I don't use Twitter that
That
much. I find my recent experience of it is a bit, But yeah, I'm mostly active on Instagram.
Yeah.
So it's Maake _ Lekgolo. Maake is my surname.
Yeah.
Lekgolo, Lekgolo. Yeah, that's my grandfather's name. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So Maake Lekgolo, that's me on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. Any public speaking engagements that you have in the pipeline or intending to do, or are you open to them if people want to have you, to speak at their events?
No, definitely. I do not really have anything that is coming up. Because the PhD, so
Keeps you busy. It keeps you busy. Yeah.
so yeah, I'm pushing the PhD a lot.
Yeah.
But I do try. When someone asks me and say, "Can we, have a chat, or can you present a seminar, or something like that?" I do that because I even in my papers I argue this: we need to keep the conversations going. So whenever there's space to have the conversation, so let's have the conversation and chat.
Tshepo, thank you so much for coming through. We appreciate it. We appreciate the knowledge that you've shared with us. And I think as I'm listening, probably viewers as well will be challenged as well, to pay attention to the issues that you have raised, but most importantly to keep the conversation going. One of the things that you touched on is the privilege, that we have, and I think many a times we don't realize how privileged we are in different spaces, and that other people have totally opposite experiences. You read about stories from other African countries, and you actually realize that you are definitely privileged. And all the best with the work that you do.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me.
That's
this was
a
actually a nice conversation. Thanks.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thanks,
Yeah. So this is how we are wrapping up this episode, and as per usual, we look at the myths and the truth. And the myth for today: coming out at work is not a big deal. After all, it is the 21st century. But the reality is that though the LGBTQI plus community has been big wins, in fact has gained big wins in the past few years, coming out is still dangerous in many areas of the world and can be deadly for trans and gender diverse people, as Tshepo also shared with us in the mining sector, that it is not that simple. And even in countries that are economically developed and progressive like Australia, homosexuality has only been decriminalized since 1997, and marriage equality was just legalized in December of last year. So that can tell you how slow things are progressing. So the queer rights movement is still very much in progress, and these factors into some workplace cultures and how comfortable people may feel in terms of coming out. So don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't feel any kind of pressure that you should come out. When the time is right, you'll do that. All right. Thank you so much for making time to join once again on Dreamstream. We always every week make sure that you have a new episode coming out. And as Tshepo said, I adopt that. Let's keep the conversation going. And if you are watching via YouTube, subscribe and leave your comments, because we'd love to hear what are your thoughts, and perhaps you can even share what are other topics that you'd like us to actually sit down and talk about. From me for now, have a good day and keep well until the next episode.